The Cyberwire podcast is made possible in part by listeners like you who contribute to our Patreon page. You can learn more at patreon.com/thecyberwire. Kenya's Supreme Court voids that country's presidential election results over electronic irregularities in the balloting. The Chinese step up cyber espionage against Vietnam during South China Sea disputes. Ransomware continues to surge this week. WikiLeaks dumps Angelfire documents from Vault 7. Reality Winner says she wasn't properly Mirandized by the FBI. North Korea raids South Korean Bitcoin exchanges. And get ready for WhopperCoin. Time to take a moment to tell you about our sponsor, Recorded Future, the real-time threat intelligence company. Recorded Future's patented technology continuously analyzes the entire web to give cybersecurity analysts unmatched insight into emerging threats. We read their dailies here at the Cyberwire, and you can too. Sign up for Recorded Future's Cyber Daily email to get the top trending technical indicators crossing the web. Cyber news, targeted industries, threat actors, exploited vulnerabilities, malware, suspicious IP addresses, and more. Subscribe today and stay ahead of the cyber attacks. They watch the web so you have time to think and make the best decisions possible for your enterprise's security. Go to recordedfuture.com/intel to subscribe for free threat intelligence updates from Recorded Future. It's timely, it's solid, and it's on the money. That's recordedfuture.com/intel. And we thank Recorded Future for sponsoring our show. Major funding for the Cyberwire podcast is provided by Cylance. I'm Dave Bittner in Baltimore with your Cyberwire summary for Friday, September 1st, 2017. In a surprise ruling, Kenya's Supreme Court voided that country's presidential elections over irregularities in the balloting. The August 8th elections had returned incumbent Uhuru Kenyatta to office, and the losing opposition candidate, Raila Odinga, had petitioned the court to nullify the results, charging that the vote had been hacked and otherwise electronically manipulated. Few thought Odinga's suit had much merit, particularly since international observers had concluded the election was fairly conducted. Mr. Odinga himself seems as surprised as anyone by the decision. The court has directed that a new election be held within 60 days. FireEye says Chinese cyber operators have increased their attacks on government and business targets in Vietnam. The attacks coincide with increased tension over South China Sea territorial claims. Locky and other ransomware have surged this week. One strain is even reported to have been present in certain U.S. government websites. WikiLeaks yesterday dumped documents purporting to describe a CIA implant framework, Angelfire, said to be effective against Windows 7 and Windows XP machines. Bleeping Computer sniffs that if Angelfire is indeed a CIA product, it doesn't represent Langley's best work. Its discussion characterizes the tools described as crude. The presumed targets are also old, which again leads one to wonder when and how WikiLeaks is getting the material it's producing. There are suspicions about other leaks, and some of those have taken the form of indictments. The legal proceeding currently in the news is the one in a Georgia U.S. federal court. Accused leaker and former NSA contractor Reality Winner has told that court she wasn't properly Mirandized when she first spoke with FBI special agents searching her apartment. Her lawyers have petitioned to have the things she said to those agents excluded at trial. Reports indicate that her conversation with the feds amounted to a confession, which would explain their eagerness to keep it out. Reality Winner, you will recall, is the former Air Force service member who was inadvertently outed to U.S. authorities by The Intercept when it contacted them to authenticate the documents Winner allegedly passed to the publication. North Korean operators have this week been more closely tied to raids on South Korean Bitcoin exchanges. The DPRK is expected to make more such attacks as it seeks to compensate for revenue lost from sanctions imposed to constrain its nuclear and ballistic missile programs. Finally, cryptocurrency meets the Hamburglar. Well, not exactly, since it's Burger King and not a McDonald's innovation, and we'd be the last people to suggest that there's no difference between the two global fast food titans. I mean, we've been to the food court at the Towson Town Center. We know what's up. So let's call it the blockchain comes to the Burger King. Anyway, here's what's up in the Arbat and in lots of other convenient locations throughout Greater Moscow. Burger King has introduced its own cryptocurrency, WhopperCoin, to its Russian operations. Every ruble you spend on a Whopper Junior, Gamburger, or even a Lonk Biff in Chelyabinsk or Krasnodar will get you one WhopperCoin, which is a pretty sweet way of having it your way in our book. When you've amassed 1,700 WhopperCoin, you can exchange them for a tasty, flame-grilled, non-virtual Whopper. The BBC has saved our staff data scientists the trouble of checking menus, exchange rates, and actually adding and doing the troublesome long division. And the Beeb estimate that customers will be able to get a free sandwich for every 5 or 6 they buy with real money. Real money. Ha! Like cryptocurrency isn't real money. Get with the times, BBC. And while you're at it, put on your bowler, ankle on down to the local Burger King instead of the Drones Club, and just imagine the possibilities. So anyway, the King is working with the cryptocurrency startup Wave, which says it's already generated 1 billion WhopperCoin to prep for the big launch, which they're not calling an initial coin offering, but which we think they should. So why is this not just an ordinary loyalty program? Well, it sort of is when you think about it, which is pretty much the point. One of the problems with all sorts of loyalty programs, from airline miles to supermarket bonus points, is the limited range of things you can exchange them for. Another is the difficulty of keeping track of them, the heated altercations at the counter, and so on. So a cryptocurrency would be a good way of having it your way, a little like the old S&H green stamps your great-grandmother used to save, only without the gluey taste. Burger King Russia Communications Director Ivan Shistov says the company has transformed the Whopper into an investment vehicle. As he put it, now it's not just a burger, which is loved in more than 90 countries, but it's also a tool for investment. Experts predict a rapid increase in the cost of cryptocurrency. Therefore, eating one today is a reserve for financial well-being tomorrow. Academic experts think Burger King may be onto something. Cryptocurrency mavens at both Cambridge and Cornell think loyalty programs are a good use case for the blockchain. So the next time you're passing down Tsvetnoy Boulevard, remember, it's not just a sandwich, it's practically a 401k. Here's a quick note about our sponsor, E8 Security. We've all heard a lot about artificial intelligence and machine learning. Hey, who of a certain age doesn't know that Skynet achieved self-awareness and sent the Terminator back to take care of business? But that's science fiction, and not even very plausible science fiction. But the artificial intelligence and machine learning that E8 is talking about isn't science fiction at all. They're here today. And E8's white paper, available at e8security.com/cyberwire, can guide you through the big picture of these still emerging but already proven technologies. We all need to turn data into understanding and information into meaning. AI and machine learning can help you do that. See what they can do for you at e8security.com/cyberwire. And we thank E8 for sponsoring our show. And I'm pleased to be joined once again by Joe Kerrigan. He's from the Johns Hopkins University Information Security Institute. Joe, welcome back. We saw an article come by from Quartz, and the headline was, "Using a fitness app taught me the scary truth about why privacy settings are a feminist issue." And really, to summarize the article here, there's a woman who used an app to track her running.
Right.
And she thought she had disabled the ability for anyone else to see what she was doing.
Right.
But it turns out this app has a lot of different levels of security. She had turned off public sharing, but she hadn't turned off being posted to the leaderboard.
Right.
And because she was such a good runner, she made it to the leaderboard, and suddenly she started getting messages from people who she didn't know saying,
Yep.
"Hey, great run around that place you were today that you weren't intending to share with everyone."
Right, exactly. Well, this is one of the consequences of making everything social, right?
Yeah.
Is now people that you don't know become part of your social circle. And I use social with scare quotes around it.
Because you're a big fan of the social sharing, right?
Right, and being someone who generally avoids social interaction myself, I don't fill out my complete profile on Facebook.
Right.
I'm sure Facebook knows exactly where I live, but it's not listed on my profile because the data has not been entered into my profile. People need to be aware that when you're working with these apps that claim to be social, and I use a social fitness app, when you're working with them, you are sharing this information with people, and you're making it available to people you might not want to make it available to.
Yeah, and the woman who wrote this article made the point that this could be a safety issue because
it absolutely could be a safety issue.
Who knows? She did not intend to share the location of her runs.
Right.
And
but just by using the app, she did inadvertently. And
so it's also the point of whether or not you need to opt in or opt out.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's a big debate around that. I see both sides of the issue. I see the definite personal responsibility side of the issue, but at some point in time, we're talking about large amounts of data being gathered, and that's something I would rather opt into than have to opt out of.
Yeah, it's interesting because it seems like the European standard is to opt in,
Yep.
And for those of us here in the United States, you're opted in.
Right, you're opted in, you have to opt out.
Right.
But to be fair, the European standard, if you go to a European website, their opt-in policy is opt in or don't use the service.
I see.
So, you log on and this says, this site uses cookies. If you don't like that, leave the site. And if you click OK, then they start gathering cookies. And if you leave the site, then you can't use the service.
Right. So I guess the bottom line here is buyer beware.
Right.
I hate to say read the EULA because that's
nobody does that.
It's unrealistic, really.
Right,
I mean, who am I kidding?
Yeah, exactly.
But I guess if privacy is a concern for you, it's worth shopping around to try to find. There's no shortage of fitness apps out there.
There is no shortage of these things.
Try to find the one that respects your privacy, and if there is one that starts out from the get-go as making you opt into sharing these things. You agree?
I do agree. I'm sorry. I didn't know you were waiting for me to say something. It's caveat emptor pretty much all the time.
All right.
You're on your own.
Yeah. All right. Joe Kerrigan, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Now a word about our sponsor, the upcoming Cybersecurity Conference for Executives. The Johns Hopkins University Information Security Institute and Compass Cybersecurity will host the event on Tuesday, September 19th in Baltimore, Maryland, on the Johns Hopkins Homewood campus. The theme this year is Emerging Global Cyber Threats, and the conference will feature discussions with thought leaders across a variety of sectors. You can find out more and register at thecyberwire.com/JHU Compass. Learn more about the current and emerging cybersecurity threats to organizations and how executives can better protect their enterprise's data. Speakers include cyber lawyer Howard Feldman, IoT engineering expert Dr. Kevin Cornegay, and healthcare data security thought leader Robert Wood. You can find out more at thecyberwire.com/JHU Compass. And we thank the Cybersecurity Conference for Executives for sponsoring our show. My guest today is Charles Henderson. He's the global head of IBM's X-Force Red, where he leads a team doing penetration testing as well as vulnerability research. Among his areas of research are connected cars, and not long ago he had some direct experience with some automotive vulnerabilities.
Several years ago, I bought a connected car, and it was this awesome car. It was convertible. It was really my dream car. Family grew, and the car just wasn't practical. So I traded it in. But the interesting thing was I had this app that controlled all sorts of things, and I could geolocate the car and do all sorts of fun stuff with it. And I noticed that my old car was still listed when I got home and enrolled my new car into the app. And I'd done a factory reset of the old car before I traded it in because I didn't want, my contacts from Bluetooth going to the new owner. I wanted the car to be fresh and clean. And, I'm sort of paranoid as a security researcher as well.
Sure.
I figured that eventually the dealership would reset the control of the car, and that it was just a matter of the fact that it had just been a few days since I'd sold the car. Well, days turned into weeks turned into years, and now I guess it's been 4 years now, I still have access to that old car.
So what can you do? Can you remotely start it? Are you able to freak out the new owners, or what?
Yeah, I think the headline is car possess. I can geolocate it. Shortly after we reported this issue, many of the car companies, their geolocation capabilities of cars, so that you had to be within 1 mile of the car to geolocate it. The problem is that you self-report where you were located, so your phone self-reports where it's located. And I wrote an app that basically lied about where my phone was located. And at about, roughly 300 web requests, you can cover most metropolitan areas. I think New York City was like 312. I can geolocate it. I can honk the horn, adjust the climate control,
wow.
Things like that. I can actually unlock it. The reason that this still works is they didn't deprovision my access. And it's important because that second owner doesn't think of their car as a connected car. They think of their car as a car because it functions exactly the way it's supposed to. And there's no warning light on the dash. Hey, Charles Henderson's accessing your car.
Right.
It's sort of the same phenomenon as IoT in general. What does a connected light bulb look like? It looks like a light bulb.
So you notify the manufacturers that this is an issue. What was the response?
And that's the really interesting part. So at first, the manufacturer said, well, this is a dealership problem. We went through the responsible vulnerability disclosure process with the dealership. I think that was mainly just to see what would happen. Turns out, no, a dealership is not equipped to handle this. And candidly, you'd have to notify thousands of dealerships across the world. At first, there was a push that, it's the first owner's responsibility to make sure that their access is deprovisioned. And actually, some of the car companies, the legal teams at least, had obviously thought about this because there were some lines in some of the car companies' automobile contracts that said in the T's and C's for accessing the app that it was the first owner's responsibility, basically that you're responsible for decommissioning your access. Other car companies compared it to having a set of keys and keeping them. But it's very different than keys because my keys don't geolocate the car. It's a very heightened level of access. In the long run, though, the car companies realized it was an issue, and you're starting to see them try to deal with it. We've actually been in contact with them and running through some of the scenarios they might use as a solution to the problem. The key here is that when they were designing that car, when they were making it connected, they were thinking so much about getting the car off the lot and not about 3 years down the line when the car got sold.
Was there no provision by which the car's new owner or manufacturer could disable your access to that car?
The car's new owner could if they knew that I had access to the car, but it's kind of almost a catch-22 where they don't know I have access without checking, and they don't check because they don't know I have access.
Right.
So
somewhere buried in a menu, there may be a list of the people or devices that have access to this car, but why would you go looking for that menu if you think you were getting a clean car?
That's where it gets worse. It's not actually a menu in the car. They would have to actually go to the dealership and talk to someone that many dealerships call them a provisioning specialist. Basically, they go deep into a system, and that's because in the early stages of connected car, that account subsystem wasn't really exposed. And even if there's a web portal where you could log in and check who has access to the car, unless you're using the connected car function, you're probably never going to see that web portal. So increasingly, what you're seeing manufacturers do is say, hey, we really need a menu in the car that shows who has access. Yeah, and it also underscores a problem that you see in a lot of areas of security. Everyone thought it was someone else's responsibility. The new car dealership thought it was the used lot's responsibility. The used car dealership thought it was the car manufacturer's responsibility. The car manufacturer thought it was the owner's responsibility. The owner thought, hey, I don't have access to the system. How on earth could this be my responsibility? You start seeing this sort of convoluted web of ownership. And the truth is, if you have disagreement about whose responsibility security is no one's responsibility. There needs to be clearly defined responsibility chain for security to work. And this is an example of security failing because no one had ownership.
That's Charles Henderson from IBM's X-Force Red. We've got an extended version of this interview on our Patreon page for our supporters there. Go to patreon.com/thecyberwire to check it out. And that's the Cyberwire. Thanks to all of our sponsors who make the Cyberwire possible, especially to our sustaining sponsor, Cylance. To find out how Cylance can help protect you through the use of artificial intelligence, check out Cylance.com. The Cyberwire podcast is produced by Pratt Street Media. Our editor is John Petrick. Social media editor is Jennifer Iben. Technical editor is Chris Russell. Executive editor is Peter Kilpie. And I'm Dave Bittner. Have a great weekend. Thanks for listening.